Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count coming at you, and this is your AEW Dynamite post show for October 1st, 2025. This is the 6-year anniversary of AEW Dynamite, and in the 6 years of AEW, there has been a lot of moments that we can look back on. Some really good, some really bad. And it's crazy to think about that because 6 years, when you really think about it, it really put your mind to it. It's not a long time, right? 6 years. When you say it out loud, there might be a little bit, but when you're living through it, it goes by like this, right? And you can look back and think of the great moments in the history of Dynamite. Danielson versus Kenny Omega at Grand Slam at Arthur Ashe. You can think of these other great moments in the history of AEW, Sting's retirement tour, what else? CM Punk teaming up with Sting and Darby Allin at the Greensboro Coliseum against MJF and FTR. Then you can think about all the low moments in AEW, right? The departure of Cody Rhodes, something that is still continued to talk about to this day, and Brawl Out, which I feel as if it something that's a dark cloud that really only recently within the last year maybe has gone away. And every once in a while it finds its way to poke its head back into it. But guys, we're going to get into the show. And before we get into the show, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. We open up the show with a trios match between the AEW Tag Team Champions and Kenny Omega, probably the most important face in all of AEW, against the Bucks and Josh Alexander. The Bucks, ever since winning that match, they were able to get $500,000. They have been splurging. They have been big ballers again. They have kind of got their swagger back since winning the money. And before we got into this match, we saw some filming take place where they were outside. And you had Nick discussing, not Nick, it was Matt discussing about how tonight is going to be this grand night because it's the 6-year anniversary. We're going to have all this different pyros and all these different bells and whistles for their entrance. And you see Matt, Nick, as soon as Matt leaves and says, what I can do with this, I can go to the casino. He goes to the casino and gambles it all away, which I feel like everybody can relate to some extent, especially if you're somebody who likes to indulge in sports gambling. I know there's been many a Sundays where I thought, man, this is a can't-miss parlay, and poof, within the first slate of games, that thing has gone up in smoke. So he gambles all the money away. The Bucks, they get the jobber entrance. No pyro, no music, just straight them into the ring already. We get the graphic. This is the Broke Bucks. Josh Alexander comes. Then we get the entrance involving the champs and Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega has been somebody who has been, publicly set out, through the last several months that is basically a dream opponent for Josh Alexander. They still haven't had a singles match, but we saw them finally be able to mix it up in this match for an extended period of time. Josh Alexander, I think that he has fit in like a glove ever since that he has joined AEW. I think this has been a solid signing for Tony Khan and crew. Brodito, they are the hottest act in all of the tag team division. This is a division that all of a sudden feels revitalized now with the reintroduction of the Jurassic Express, the possible reintroduction of the Acclaim, which is kind of funny when you think about it. They basically, with that storyline, they have told, like, hey, you guys suck when you guys are apart, so we don't really know what we're going to do with you guys, so we're just going to put you back together. And this was a really solid match and a really good way to start off the show. Anytime I feel like we can get Kenny Omega on TV, it should be something that should be appreciated. He is somebody who over the last several years has, we've seen in front of our very own eyes, his body has kind of betrayed him. So I kind of feel as if it's a blessing anytime we see Kenny Omega grace our television screens, especially on Dynamite. They were able to pick up the win, and we saw this confrontation at the end of the match where it looked as if the Bucks and Kenny Omega, who throughout the match we saw the Bucks double team Kenny Omega. We all know their history of being in the elite and how they are, the EVPs of the company. And we see Kenny Omega look as if he's going to confront the Bucks. The Bucks kind of have like a blank expression on their face. And before we could really see anything develop between them, we see Josh Alexander come out of his way and start, wailing on Kenny Omega. The Bucks, they're about to join in on that, but we see Jurassic Express come out and make the save. Jack Perry, he's somebody who has issues with the Bucks as well. And we see the Jurassic Express clear out the Bucks. We see Jack Perry and Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega isn't too happy with Jack Perry. If you guys remember, Jack Perry was a part of that angle where we saw him and the Bucks take out Tony Khan and Kenny Omega after he battled with diverticulitis. And Kenny Omega didn't forget that, obviously. But we see Jurassic Express and the Bucks brawl. We see Kenny Omega get in the middle of the ring, and he starts cutting a promo that he did look gassed. And he's basically going through, the highs and lows of the past 6 years. Saying, I've been a part of some great moments, been a part of some bad moments, but this whole experience being in AEW, I feel as if it's made me a better person. It's basically the main gist of this. And he does his farewell, but before he does his farewell, we see the arena go pitch black, and we see somebody in a mask, and the mask is taken off and is revealed to be none other than Andrade. Andrade, fresh off of his WWE release, and Andrade makes history. I believe he is the first wrestler to go from WWE to AEW, back to WWE, and back to AEW. He is somebody who is very much so non-committed to working in one specific place for a substantial amount of time. I would not be surprised if within the next 2-3 years we see Andrade back in WWE. This guy he goes where the money is and where the opportunity is. And we see him after him attacking Kenny Omega. He aligns himself with Don Callis. So he's a new member of the Don Callis family, who is also getting another addition that we're going to talk about later on in the night. And Andrade is back. We're getting a tease of an Andrade versus Kenny Omega match, which I am sure that mostly everybody would be excited about. I know I'm personally excited about. Andrade is somebody who I don't think it's a stretch for me to say is very talented in the ring. I think it's pretty well known amongst most fans, whether you're somebody who's on the WWE side or the AEW side or somebody who's down the middle. I think we can all agree that the guy's talented in the ring. There was some reports coming out once he was released from WWE that some of them I kind of feel as if was kind of throwing dirt on the guy's name on the way out, kind of kicking him on the ass on the way out. There was one of the reports that I found pretty really hard to believe was WWE was frustrated that his English didn't improve. And if you ever watch WWE, you can kind of sift through that and tell that that's a bunch of bullshit, right? You watch an episode of Monday Night Raw, you see Io Sky, who is in a prominent position, cutting the majority of her promo in Japanese. You see Stephanie McCure, who is a new WWE Women's Champion on Raw, cutting most of her promos in Spanish. So you have two people who are in prominent positions not speaking English and who, it's obviously not their first language. And it seems to not, hinder them in any way. So I don't think that was something that was, had really any merit to it. I just think that was something to throw some dirt on his name. Because for me, I think the guy speaks perfect English, or not perfect English, well enough for me to understand. And I think with the character that he portrays, a strong Spanish accent makes a lot of sense. But hey, maybe that's just me. As long as Jack doesn't have to deal with the Jungle Boy name. Well, you saw them call him Jungle Boy Jack Perry. I don't think they're ever going to call him just straight Jungle Boy again. He is a trailblazer. He is. Andrade is a trailblazer. They show a video package of the history of Dynamite of the last 6 years. If you paid close attention, they showed Cody Rhodes in there. If you guys remember, I think this was one of the very early episodes of Dynamite where we see Cody Rhodes break the glass and get into that booth that Chris Jericho was in when he was feuding with when they first started feuding with the Inner Circle. They showed CM Punk on that episode of Dynamite where he teamed up with Darby Allin and Sting, where he had the face paint. I was there that night. That was a very cool night. So a lot of crazy moments in AEW's history in the last 6 years. Just off the top of my head, man, there's plenty of moments that I think back and be like, wow. Especially during this pandemic, the time period where people had to get, where both companies had to kind of get really creative. Where the beginning of it they had no audience, then AEW was able to slowly matriculate smaller audiences. That was a time period where I felt as if wrestling really had to do their best and really had to try to be as creative as possible to make do with the situation that they had, right? Guys, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. Brody was in that too. Yeah, he was. Mr. Brody Lee. R.I.P. Man, I miss that guy, man. I wonder, you think back, about, just the brief period of time that he was in AEW. That dog collar match that he had with Cody Rhodes, I thought was great. That segment that he had where he was kind of spoofing Vince McMahon, where we hear all these stories about Vince McMahon, and one of the main stories that we hear is that he doesn't like it when people sneeze. We saw this, the vignette where Brody Lee is in the back eating a steak and somebody sneezes while he eats, and he tells everybody, "Get out, get out, get out." So, Brody Lee, he made a big impact in a small amount of time in AEW, and it would have been nice to see, what he would have been able to do if he was there longer and what direction the Dark Order was going to go with him at the helm, because at that point, it was more of a serious faction, then eventually became a comedy act. And it would have been interesting to see, the direction that it would have went if they would have kept that serious angle. But hey, we get cut back to the show, and we see Mark Briscoe cutting a promo. Mark Briscoe coming off of his big-time win against MJF at All Out. And he says, for the past 6 months, life has really been consuming me. And there's been 3 letters that have really been consuming me the most. Those 3 letters are MJF. He says, I told you to keep my brother's name out of your mouth. He says, all this time to talk about how I can't win the big one. Well, I was sure able to win a big-time match at All Out. It says, when you talk about me not being able to win the big one, I assume you're talking about winning championships, and I would be the TNT champion if you didn't screw me out of my match. And he says, I may not be going after the TNT championship right now. He says, but after Hologram was taken out on Saturday, Hologram, if you guys don't know, is going to be out for a substantial amount of time. Unfortunately, we had Orange Cassidy take his place, another member of the conglomerate. He talked about how, the difference between him and MJF is he could be, happy for his friends, and he could celebrate for his friends. He said after Orange Cassidy defeats Kyle Fletcher for the TNT Championship, he's going to go down to that ring and celebrate with Orange Cassidy while MJF watches on the TV and picks thumbtacks out of his ass, which is a very, insane visual if you sit there and think about it. It sounds extremely painful. Dark Order would be as big as the Don family. Numbers-wise, Don Callis family has about 50 guys in it. And we talked about this earlier on many different occasions. This is pretty much very reminiscent of the late stages of the NWO. I feel like this is a bit different, though, because with this, it feels as if, every member of the Don Callis family, for the most part, is a top guy. Or at least if they're not a top guy, they're at least, higher, lower mid-card. This is a group that features Okada, Josh Alexander, Andrade now, Hechicero, Kyle Fletcher, Takeshita, all these names who are featured prominent on the show for the most part. So this isn't like, where the NWO had Virgil in it, or, Horace Hogan, all these guys. So there is no, for the most part, weak link in this group. So we get to the TNT Championship match. Kyle Fletcher, coming off of his main event match against Hangman Page at All Out. Kyle Fletcher really has been a guy who's been able to step up ever since Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland, were sidelined by the injuries. And this is a guy who, many people compare him to a young Randy Orton. According to Stevie Richards, this is a guy who isn't even good enough to make it in NXT. He needs to go to NXT first to be able to learn how to eventually get to a point where he belongs in NXT, which is kind of crazy to say from Stevie. But Kyle looked like $1 million in this match for the most part. Kyle, anytime that Orange Cassidy was trying to get some offense in, for the most part, Kyle had a counter. OC, beloved by the people ever since he came back. But at the end of the night, he wasn't able to withstand the onslaught that Kyle Fletcher was able to unleash. It looked as if there was a point where OC was going to be able to really be able to rally his way back into this match. Don Callis, he got on the apron to distract the referee. We see Hologram appear, or what it appeared to be Hologram, to neutralize Don Callis and get him off of the ramp. But we see him throw Orange Cassidy off of the top rope. Kyle Fletcher is able to capitalize. Kyle picks up the win. Him and Hologram, they start stomping on Orange Cassidy after this. The conglomerate comes to make the save. But then after that, we see the Don Callis family stand over there on the ramp, and it is revealed that this isn't Hologram. This is the clone of Hologram that we have been teased, over for the past several weeks. So Don Callis family is looking stacked. I don't know if there's going to be any group that is going to be able to, numbers-wise especially, be able to withstand all of these members. I don't know what is going to happen. I don't know who is going to be able to stand up to these guys, but it's going to take a strong amount of guys to be able to take out the Don Callis family. All upper mid card with main event potential on any given night. I agree. Orange Cassidy was robbed by shenanigans. The dreaded shenanigans, man. Shenanigans ruin everything. What's the Super Troopers? Hey, Farma, what's that restaurant you like with all the silly shit on the wall and stuff? Oh, you talking about shenanigans? Great film. Next, we get a backstage segment with the CEO, Mercedes Moné, the GOAT. And Renee Paquette, she's congratulating Mercedes Moné on her big-time win against Rio at All Out. And she mentioned the fact that, I don't quite remember the specific amount of dates. I believe that it was 16 dates away from her breaking Jade Cargill's record for, the amount of time that she was able to keep the TBS championship. And then she is, asked by Renee about her thoughts on the new introduced women's tag team championships. And you see Mercedes, she says, if there's anybody who knows anything about, women's tag team championships, it's me. If you guys remember, she was the first women's tag team champion in WWE. I don't even remember what they did with those belts. I'm going to be honest. I watch WWE on a weekly basis, and I don't even remember who has those championships, man. Whew. Those titles. Who the hell? I would have to hit the Google. I don't know who has those titles. But she mentions before that next week, Dynamite's going to be on Tuesday, so we're going to do the show on Tuesday. She says it's going to take place on Daily's Place. She says, I don't want to wrestle anybody from Japan. I don't want to wrestle anybody from Germany. She says, I want to wrestle somebody from Florida, which I'm sure people are going to start. And she did mention a name, so I'm sure they're going to start, guessing who this person is, right? And she asks, who's going to be my tag team partner? She's interrupted by a returning Mercedes puppet. Harley Cameron has the puppet in her hand, and you see Mercedes. She basically comments, she's like, "You tag team with everybody." And Harley says, I'm friends with the whole AEW locker room. She's like, but there's something about the chemistry that we have. Basically throwing her hat in the ring of being Mercedes' partner. And Mercedes says, no, we don't have a natural chemistry. And anytime we ever tag teamed, you were the one who took the pin and we lost. I think that this is the perfect pairing for the two. Mercedes, being the serious character that she is, and, reluctantly tag teaming with Harley Cameron, who I think has become easily one of the more entertaining people on the roster. I think this would be a good dynamic. And we hear all these different complaints all the time about AEW doesn't focus on stories and all these different things, yada yada. I think that that's a crutch that people or say that who don't watch the show, but that's neither here nor there. I think that this would be a perfect pairing for the two. Very reminiscent of maybe an RK Bro type of deal. And I think that this would be something that could work. And hopefully that's the direction that we're going. And it looks as if to be a possibility. Guys, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe. The pup is more over than Mercedes. Do not disrespect the GOAT. It is not tolerated on the fast count or in the Zwicker residence, period. Next, we get into another trios match. We get the Death Riders, Mox, Garcia, Bald Claudio against Hobbs, Samoa Joe, and the AEW World Champion, Hangman Adam Page. Now, the Death Riders, Hangman, as we all know, going back all the way to July and all that, and prior to that, they have been mixing it up with each other on a weekly basis. Hangman Adam Page, we kind of didn't know the direction that he was heading in towards Wrestle Dream. There was no really clear opponent until after what went down in this match to where we got a reveal of who is going to be his opponent for Wrestle Dream. But this is an extremely solid match. Claudio, one of the more unsung heroes on the whole AEW roster. The way that he was able to, unleash so many different uppercuts on all these different guys, and whether it was Joe, Hobbs, or Hangman Adam Page, it was something, man. It was something. It was crazy to where he was able to the amount of uppercuts that he was able to hit on all of these guys. But the good guys were able to pick up the win. And what really people are going to be talking about is what went down after the match. Hangman, he hands the title off to Hobbs. He hands the title to Samoa Joe. I guess the way that he handed him off was very disrespectfully to Samoa Joe. It wasn't something of his liking. He pulls Hangman back by the shoulder. They get in each other's face. We had the security come and break it up. The guys wanted to get physical. We see later on that Hangman, he issues a challenge to Samoa Joe for Wrestle Dream. Samoa Joe later accepts it. So this is going to be the world title match at Wrestle Dream. These are two guys who have wrestled before. Samoa Joe, he, on multiple occasions during tonight, he mentioned the fact that Hangman has never beat him. So I'm looking forward to that. Samoa Joe in a world title match against Hangman Page. Good stuff. Samoa Joe, legend. Whether it was in ROH, TNA, he's been able to carve himself up a nice little niche here in AEW. And I think it's going to be a good match. And Wrestle Dream is starting to shape up to be a solid show for the most part right now. No lies told. The public gets bigger pop than your whatever. How about them Red Sox, man? How about those Red Sox? That's something that needs to be talked about, right? About those Sox. Those Sox. It took a nice little L to my Yankees tonight. Next, we get into Tony Storm versus Ty Mello. Ty Mello is somebody who isn't featured on Dynamite on a regular basis. Going up against Tony Storm, a good opportunity for her. Tony, who ever since losing that AEW Women's Championship at All Out to Chris Statlander, has kind of been a lost soul. And you can see that throughout this match. My main takeaway from this match, looking at my notes, was this is more competitive than I initially thought it would have been going into it. It was a nice, decent match when the amount of time-wise as well. It went 10 minutes, and Tony Storm was able to pick up the win, but it was competitive. We'll see what happens tomorrow, Sunshine. Big game from the Judger, I'm expecting. If not, I pray to the baseball gods that Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman are handed the pink slips. I am tired of Aaron Boone, and Brian Cashman is an egghead. But after this match, Tony Storm, she goes on and she discusses what went down at All Out. And she says, at All Out, when the bell rang, I didn't hear, victory. I didn't hear defeat. I heard nothing. And all I could do was stare at Statlander because she was everything that I wasn't. And that is a champion. And I am nothing without the championship. And she says, I issue a challenge. I need to know one-on-one who's better between me and you. Statlander, name the time, name the place. Statlander later mentions Wrestle Dream, and that is going to be our AEW Women's Championship match at Wrestle Dream. Stat Storm. Big. Next, we get into the GOA versus the Swirl. The Swirl. Blake Christian. Every day on the X is begging Jack Harlow to allow him to have, Love It On Me license to Tony Khan for his entrance. I believe that it'll happen sooner rather than later, but that day isn't today. GOA, they basically handed the Swirl's ass on a platter. And after that, you see Ricochet. He was able to throw Blake back into the ring, hit him with a spirit gun after the win. It looked as if they were going to continue to, handle this beatdown situation to the Swirl, but we get interrupted by the Hurt Syndicate. Corey outdoes Boone every night. Boone's a freaking moron. All right. You know what's so funny? And I've thought this the whole time for many years. Every time they talk about Boone, right? They talk about him as a player. They mention him hitting the home run against the Red Sox in 03 in the ALCS to send them to the World Series. Well, to me, they put that moment on such a pedestal, but nobody ever mentions the fact that the Yankees lost the World Series that year. So to me, it's like, okay, that's a cool moment, but we didn't win the championship. So like, why is it such this moment that's on such a big pedestal? I get it's beating the rivals Red Sox and going to the World Series, but we lost. So for me, that takes kind of the shine off of that moment. But who knows? But I'm going with the Yankees. Yankees taking the W tomorrow, or I am going to scream. But anyways, so the Syndicate, they appear. MVP, the show takes place in Florida. MVP, a Florida boy. He comes out and he says, he asked the crowd, he's like, I got a few questions. He's like, do we got any 786 area codes in the house? Do we got any 956 area codes in the house? Do we got any 305 area 6s in the house? Shout out to Pitbull. And he says, at All Out, I embarrassed myself a little bit. Not only, by taking the pin, losing to Ricochet. He's like, I want to apologize, to the fans. I want to apologize to my associates, Bobby Lashley and MVP and Shelton Benjamin. They didn't lose. I lost. And he says, I may have lost a step in the ring. I may not be what I once was, but I can still fight. I don't want, a match. I don't want to lace up my boots. I want to have a street fight. We're going to get a street fight next week at Daly's Place between the Hurt Syndicate and GOA and Ricochet. They do hurt. I enjoy them. Boone hit a hanging another while. I feel like I'll be here. Oh my God. I know it's tied now. It bothered me so much that Max Fried yesterday came out and pitched a freaking gem. And this freaking moron, this boob, Aaron Boone comes and takes him out early. And it's like, I just know it's not all him, right? Because these managers, this isn't, 20 years ago where you got like a Lou Piniella or like a Joe Madden or Tony La Russa, where it's like you got these guys calling shit from the gut. You got some nerds in the office telling him like numbers and saying, hey, you need to do this at this point. So I know he's basically just a pencil pusher. But still, Freed was pitching a gem. They took him out, and as soon as they took him out, they blew the freaking game. The day after, the Jets freaking barfed all over themselves on Monday Night Football too, right? Not even Sports Week here at the Zwicker residence. My God. Cora was smart enough to keep his ace in. Yeah, because Cora isn't freaking, told every single thing to do. That's why. Because at least the Sox, I'm sure they give them numbers and analytics, but at least they give the guy the freedom to call shit on the gut sometimes. Boom, this guy freaking is just, he's a pencil pusher. And Cashman's an egghead. God, he's an egghead. Anyways, we get into the main event. This is a tornado tag team match between Darby Allin and Chris Statlander versus Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir. Wheeler Yuta is one of the, biggest heels in the company at the moment, right? If you think about the last several months, who have been the guys who have been the biggest heels in the company, it's really kind of been Wheeler Yuta and Ricochet for the most part. I know when people that think of heels, and Jon Moxley has been a big time heel as well in a different way, but I really, very shocking the fact that Yuta gets this such of a reaction from the crowd, and Ricochet gets the reaction that he gets as well. John Cena, he always would talk about how he didn't care if he was cheered or booed as long as he made noise, because when the moment that they stop making noise, that's when you need to be concerned. And the fact that they're just booing the shit out of these two guys for the most part is really a testament of how hard they have been working. But this was a really intense match. They were brawling all over the arena, brawling by the corridors, brawling on the outside. Marina, what a trooper. There was a point in the match where Wheeler Yuta, he brought thumbtacks into the ring. And it feels as if on a semi-weekly basis, somebody's putting thumbtacks in the ring. And Marina, she ended up going feet first into the tacks, which I know freaking hurt, right? I know I'm not the only one who stepped in Legos or something of the sort, and you're like, oh my God, that hurts. Imagine thumbtacks then. If stepping on Legos hurts, imagine how painful it is to step on some tacks, man. That was painful. There was a moment where Darby Allin, he blew some dust into Marina's face where she was blinded. Wheeler Yuta was in the vicinity. She ended up choking Wheeler out because she didn't see who it was. Darby and Stat was able to pick up the win off of the distraction. The good guys went home strong with a W, but that wasn't the end of it. After that, we see the Death Riders come. All of the Death Riders come. We see Darby whipping Wheeler with his belt that he has on, that he always has on, but eventually Pac was able to come out of nowhere and lay Darby Allin out. The Death Riders, they circle the ring like a bunch of hyenas. Then they start choking Darby Allin with his own belt. And Hangman, he says, I'm going to be able to make you do what you haven't done in the 6 years of AEW. And that is, I'm going to make you say, I quit. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm looking forward to that match a lot. And I think that the right call would be to have Darby Allin win. Jon Moxley undefeated against Darby Allin. John, I know that he's been such a strong heel over the last several months. He was ranked number 2 in the PWI 500 list. But I think it's some time, we have this brutal match with Darby, but it's going to be bloody and disgusting. I wouldn't be surprised if, you see Mox is going to take so many different, things to the head, whether it's a fork, whether it's a spoon, whether it's a spork, any type of utensil to the head. You're going to see a bloody mess. It's going to be violent, but I think you should have Darby pick up the W and Mox have a couple weeks vacation. I think that the guy has earned it. I think that the guy deserves it. He has been the ace for AEW. And I think it's time for the guy. Oh shit! Get some time to be able to recuperate. The tax defeat had to hurt. Wheeler just has a punchable face. That is 100% true. He does have a very punchable face, but it is late. I've been doing a lot of work lately. Have a big important meeting on Friday. Hopefully, fingers crossed, works out as well. And if it does, I'll be having more on my plate, but it's good work. But we'll be back on Monday for the Raw post show. Wasn't able to do a post show. What's up, bro? Been busy. Been busy, but I'm back. What's going on, man? You all right? Like, I'll stay for a few minutes to shoot it. You been good, man? I wasn't able to do a Raw report on Monday because I was actually at Monday Night Raw. I dropped a video afterwards, though, showing a little footage, but wasn't able to do the post show because I was obviously there. But it was a good show. Seeing it in person, was extremely surprised that Roman Reigns was there. Was happy because I acknowledged my tribal chief. Stephanie McCure wasn't there. I got this T-shirt when I was there, and she didn't appear in person, which I was disappointed with. But it was cool, fun show. I've been good. You've been all right. What did you think about Dynamite? Dynamite was good, man. It was a 6-year anniversary. I was talking about it earlier about how they've only been around for 6 years, and when you think about it, when you're in the moment, it goes by super fast. And if you think about the 6 years of the company, right, they've had all these different moments that are probably going to go down in wrestling history if you really think about it. The return to professional wrestling by CM Punk, Wembley Stadium, where they had 80,000 people there. All these different moments where Brawl Out, the departure of Cody Rhodes to WWE, all these historical moments that really are, 10, 15 years from now, we're going to look back on it and think, wow. And all of those things have happened within the first 6 years. It's crazy to think about it. Andrade coming back, I thought was cool. And it was a surprise. It's very odd and very rare these days with Stadium Stampede. Very rare these days where you don't hear these things. You get all these different returns or debuts or spoiled all the time. And for this to be come out, not hear a peep about it was refreshing. I think we kind of all knew at one point Andrade would be back because the way that he left AEW, it wasn't on bad terms. And so they kind of felt like this was going to inevitably happen, but for it to happen so quickly, I think that was the shocking part. I had a feeling he was going to be back to BHWW, wasn't working for him. I thought that when he left, and I'm pretty sure that he was thinking of this as well. The moment that Triple H took over the creative, guys like Andrade, Miro, and Aleister Black, who had big time success under Triple H when they were in the NXT Black and Gold days. I kind of think that they assumed that now with him, running the main roster, that they were going to go back to the positions that they were when he was in NXT, where they were top guys. Because I'm assuming that they had close relationships with him when they were in NXT, and I'm sure that they probably thought that he viewed them, in this really positive light, to where if they were going to come back, they were going to be, in the main event of the show, and it doesn't look to be that way. Didn't work out with Andrade there. Aleister Black, I think SmackDown is the dead zone right now when it comes to baby faces. I don't think that anybody outside of Cody Rhodes really feels like a big deal, so I don't think it's really working for him. I think Miro is doing pretty solidly right now. Him feuding with Dominic Mysterio now, and him getting that big win over Sheamus where he tapped him out. So out of the three guys, Miro's had the most success, but TKO is running shit. Paul isn't. Yeah. I think that's become kind of abundantly clear now. That what I think happens is this. I think that Triple H Whether his ideas are good or bad, I think that he kind of has a plan in place as to the direction that he wants certain things to go. And then TKO or The Rock, whenever they feel like it, they come in and they say, "Hey, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this now, and you're going to need to kind of pick up the pieces or work around this." Because and The Rock kind of basically admitted that. If you really think about it, if you remember when he was talking about, on his interview with Pat McAfee, when he made that his appearance at the Elimination Chamber, when he started to do the "I Want Your Soul" thing with Cody Rhodes, he talked about how Ari Emanuel, the guy who runs TKO, hit him up and said, "Hey, Rock, can you come to Elimination Chamber because the ticket sales are low?" And they cooked up this idea. You had Ari directly hit up The Rock. This was not a, "Hey, Triple H, you're involved in this conversation" type of deal. So Triple H, I feel like he's just there to pick up the pieces. Unfortunately, and some people don't know that, Triple H, he plays a role in creative, but when it comes down to it, The Rock, especially with him being on the board, The Rock is over him. TKO, I think that they give him certain mandates of certain things that he needs to work with. But Triple H, I think the honeymoon phase is pretty much over with a lot of fans, at least what I've been seeing. I think creatively last year, I think, in 2024, I think that WWE had the superior on-screen product to AEW, and I think Triple H was a better booker than Tony Khan. I think 2023, you could probably say the same thing. But I think this year, in 2025, I think it's abundantly clear that just from an on-screen perspective, I think that AEW has smoked WWE from a quality perspective. Now, WWE is WWE, so they're going to be they're this massive juggernaut. So we see it all the time where they're doing these big-time shows where you have 30,000, 40,000 people, the event sold out, all these different things. But just from a quality standpoint, I don't think it's been close this year. I think they'll do something with The Rock, or yes, I do think they'll do something with The Rock. May not be this year because he has that Smashing Machine movie that's coming out, I believe it's this Friday, which I'm looking extremely forward to seeing. And then he's going to be off filming a movie with Marty Scorsese. And he has another movie that he's supposed to be filming. That's said to be the reason why he dropped all this weight. He's supposed to be playing some role that required him to lose all that weight. But I do think The Rock is going to be involved for WrestleMania when it's in Saudi Arabia, because from all I am hearing, that's going to be a show where they're going to throw as much money as they possibly can to guys like The Rock. And I honestly think it's plausible. I think it's going to be plausible that The Rock is going to be the first person to make $30 million, maybe even more, off of just one match. Because these people, they throw money like it is water. They go through money like it's water. So I think they're going to throw as much money as they possibly can to The Rock for him to wrestle Roman Reigns. I think they're going to throw the kitchen sink at Steve Austin. I think they're going to possibly throw the kitchen sink at Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker. I think they are going to do whatever they can to stack that card as much as they possibly can. But one thing is for sure, Kevin Zwicker of the Fast Count will not be giving you guys a live report from Saudi Arabia at WrestleMania. Tony has learned from his mistakes. And yeah, I think that there's been some things that there was several months back. The reports came out that he was going to be more in the weeds when it comes to AEW creative. And as soon as that report came out, it became a dramatically better product. I think that ever since he's gotten himself a lot more involved, that the product has vastly improved, and I thank him for that. I don't want I don't want to see the old men. Look, I personally have no interest in that either. If I had to book a card of my prediction of what I think we're going to see on that card, I think we're going to see Roman Reigns versus The Rock. I think we're going to see CM Punk versus Steve Austin. I think that The Undertaker is going to make an appearance. I don't think that he's going to have a match because I don't believe that he physically can. But I think that he's going to be on the show. Shawn Michaels. Look, man, I don't want to see him wrestle ever again. You know, and Shawn Michaels, for the longest, I consider to be the benchmark of who the greatest in-ring professional wrestler is of all time. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see these guys. Steve Austin is the guy. He's one of the very, very rare guys in the professional wrestling business that not only did he get the perfect send-off once, against The Rock at WrestleMania, he got the perfect send-off twice. He got to get a big-time win against Kevin Owens at WrestleMania in a really solid match, might I add, in his home state of Texas. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. But I think that everybody has a price, right? Like the $1 Million Man says. So I think they're going to throw an insane amount of money to those guys. They'll throw so much cash at them that they'll do it anyways. It's insane. Yeah, I think that they will. Man, you see, what's Turkey Al-Sheikh? I believe that's the guy's name who runs all these things that are getting done for Saudi Arabia. I think it's this weekend, or it's either this weekend or it's relatively soon. They got the Riyadh Comedy Festival, which has the most stacked lineup. If you're into stand-up comedy, you got guys like Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, other big-time headliners, which for me, for guys like Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle, who are known for their kind of like in-your-face type of comedy, I don't know how they would feel safe performing the type of content that they perform in Riyadh. But that's just me. We see, I don't know if you guys think they're going to have a flag football type of deal. And you got Tom Brady involved. You got other NFL stars involved. Guys like Sauce Gardner, Max Crosby, all these other big-time names, which for me, it's like insane because like the Saudis people in Saudi Arabia I don't think anybody outside of America, maybe Canada, cares about the NFL or American football. So I don't know what's the appeal of that for them. I guess just to say that they have Tom Brady in their country, but it's probably the old guys need to stay home. The guys on the roster should be enough. They're probably given a script. Probably, right? You can joke about this, but you can't joke about that. Is there enough money in the world? I don't know. Especially for a guy like Chappelle, right? Who's extremely rich. Why would you even risk going to Saudi? They had to sit there and say, we're going to give you tens and millions of dollars. In Europe, they like football too. That's true. They just had the game in what? Ireland? The Steelers played the Vikings in Ireland last weekend. I think this weekend, the Vikings, damn, I don't know the Vikings who Vikings upset where they have all these games in Europe. The Vikings play the Browns, I believe, in Germany. So, and the Jaguars, they always play in the UK. I know the Jets, they play the Broncos, I believe, in London. So that should be fun. Waking up early in the morning for me to watch us get our ass kicked. That should be a good Sunday for me. But anyways, guys, it's been a long night. Like I said, I got to get some sleep. But we'll be back on Monday. And we'll be back on Tuesday. Remember, Dynamite's on Tuesday. So we're going to be on Tuesday for the Dynamite post show. Mark that in the calendars. And not really 100% sure about Crown Jewel, since Crown Jewel is going to be during the day. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do a post show for that. But if not, there's going to be videos covering it, so you'll be taken care of on that end. And of course, Wrestle Dream in a couple of weeks. I'll do a post show for that as well. But guys, I am Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.